Okay, y'all, reading the second part of the introduction of Culting of America, which is available for pre-sale now, and you can look at super fun packages tagged here or up there if you're watching this on TikTok. This introduction is called Good Cult, Bad Cult, and we've started off by talking about the U.S. Army. But what if cult isn't a yes or no label at all? What if it's a sliding scale, and we are all somewhere on it? For this book, I propose we set the binary aside and reject the idea of an obviously evil cult or a wonderful organization, because real life just never divides that cleanly. Instead, we'll look at all our groups through the lens of what I call the cultiness spectrum, in order to find the parallels in toxic group behavior that might be hiding in plain sight, even in our most beloved groups. I believe a cult is both a list of qualities a group possesses and also a journey that the group and its members go on. These two cannot be easily extricated from each other. To help us assess where groups fall on the cultiness spectrum, I propose a 10-part framework, which gives nod to both the qualities and the journey. A cult is a group that has a defined charismatic leader, which can be an idea, requires a shared sacred assumption, pursues a transcendent mission so big it justifies sacrifice, demands the continual sublimation of individuality, limits members' access to outsiders, creates a private vernacular, programs an us versus them mentality, exploits members' labor, enforces high exit cost, and justifies extreme behavior as their end game nears. At a certain tipping point in the cult journey, with the aid of inflexible group norms and strong systems, the leader practices nearly complete and often coercive control over its members. The end game can include acts of violence, even on a mass scale, which the cult members continue to justify in pursuit of the transcendent mission. And it all makes sense to them, one step at a time. As long as the sacred assumption holds, anything is justifiable. If your group has all 10 of these features dialed up to extreme, congratulations, you are in a cult. And you probably have some strong feelings about that. For most of us, our recognition will be more subtle. You likely recognize some of the aspects of these qualities in some of your groups, and that's not necessarily a reason to panic. Most of these features are not fundamentally harmful on their own. After all, Martin Luther King Jr. was a charismatic leader. High school football teams have an us versus them mentality. Our most esteemed charities operate with a transcendent mission, and your friend's Dungeons and Dragons group certainly has its own vernacular. The key is where these features fall on the spectrum of cultiness, how they operate in combination with the others, and ultimately what harm they cause to yourself and others. By breaking these 10 cult-making features into individual parts of group behavior, we'll be able to isolate and spot them in our regular groups, without all the fear wrapped up in the question, is this a cult? We'll discover how these features tie directly to programming, influence, power, and control, and understand how they are weaponized in society's obvious cults, like the one I came from and wrote this book about, Uncultured, which you can get signed copies of tagged here or listen to me read to you on Spotify Premium or anywhere else you get your audiobooks. The obvious cults like the one I came from, but also in socially accepted cults like the U.S. Army, which is the other half of that story. And we'll learn enough about these parts of coercive and controlling group dynamics to be able to see them in our own good and normal organizations, when perhaps only one or two dynamics are becoming problematic, long before it all gets out of hand and you have to call in someone like me to put a name on it, and long before you lose too much of yourself in the process. To understand how cults show up in everyday life, we need to expand our mental map. When most people hear the word cult, they picture a doomsday commune in the desert, matching robes, isolation, and a charismatic leader with apocalyptic promises. And they're not wrong. These commune cults are real, and some of the most harmful groups in history fit that mold. I grew up in one. But that's not the only way coercive control works. It's not even the most common way anymore. In writing this book, I wanted to expand our collective imagination of what a cult can be. Commune cults are just one corner of the map. In my life and research, I've encountered at least 3 other kinds of cults that are just as real, just as damaging, and far more common than most people realize. The 1-1 cult. The abusive relationship that operates like its own totalitarian regime. One person calls the shots, controlling everything from what their partner wears to who they talk to, what they believe, and how they see the world. It doesn't always look like abuse. It can look like love, devotion, or protection. But if you've ever known someone who seemed to vanish into a relationship, whose light got dimmer instead of brighter, chances are you've seen a 1-1 cult in action. As they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, it only takes 2 people to have a meeting. Well, the same is true for cults. The single family cult. Not all cults need a congregation. Sometimes it's one household, one parent, usually a father, sometimes a mother, sets themselves up as the voice of God, the law of the land, the center of gravity. Their children grow up in an echo chamber of fear and control, often under the guise of religion, culture, or simply how we do things in this house. When those kids try to leave, they face the same identity crises, exit costs, and lingering trauma as anyone fleeing a commune. The internet cult, the fastest growing category and the hardest to spot. It doesn't have walls or uniforms. Instead, it lives in group chats, TikToks, YouTube channels, and subreddit threads. These groups offer belonging, purpose, and identity. They speak in code, shut out dissenters, and often revolve around a single charismatic content creator or ideology. And like all cults, they promise transformation, but only if you buy in, follow the rules, and cut ties with anyone who doesn't get it. Each of these groups can include all 10 features I outline in this book. Charismatic leadership, sacred assumptions, transcendent mission, the whole coercive package, just on a different scale. They don't need compounds or matching outfits. They only need your trust, your loyalty, and your willingness to surrender autonomy in exchange for certainty and belonging. That's why this book exists, not just to help us spot the obvious cults, but to shine a light on the ones we live inside every day. The ones we join not with a bang, but with a slow, quiet nod of agreement. Cults aren't always far away and bizarre. Sometimes they're intimate. Sometimes they're inherited. And sometimes they're just one click away. Understanding that requires both lived experience and a careful outside perspective, which is why this book, while told in my voice, is the product of collaboration. It reflects a truly joint effort with my co-writer, Amy Reed. Our relationship began with my memoir, Uncultured, and has evolved over the years into a deeply creative and intellectual partnership. While this book remains personal and grounded in my point of view, every chapter and idea has been shaped through countless conversations, drafts, and redrafts with Amy. It wouldn't exist without the unique strengths we each brought to the table. Amy's writing craft and analytical nuance, and my obsessive research and firsthand experience. I'm also immensely grateful to my talent manager, Lizzie Friedman, who contributed the essay, How America Was Born and Learned It Was Special, in Chapter 7, and to my friend and colleague, Rebecca Slew, aka the White Woman Whisperer, who contributed the essay From Groups to Community, A Shift in Performance to Presence, in Chapter 11. I'm still learning what community means, but I know I have found it in writing. As Amy and I explored the inner workings of cults and control, we kept returning to one urgent question. Why are so many people vulnerable to high control systems right now? One clue comes from President Obama's 2017 farewell address to the nation, in which he warned us of the dangers of isolation and the silos that our world, upended by technology and globalization, has put us into. I'm going to have to skip that quote for time. These words are eerily prescient given the presidency and epidemic that followed, both of which exacerbated the isolation and extremism Obama identified. Although many people were shocked by these cultural shifts, some of us witnessed what seemed like the natural progression of tendencies already entrenched in the collective American psyche. We are, and always have been, since those first religious extremists, the Pilgrims, set foot on American soil, a nation defined by the distrust of institutions, a persecution complex, and stubborn self-righteousness. In many ways, cults are the most American thing there is. Check out Culting of America, which debuts January 20th, but you can get it right now.